Welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope, this time for August 22nd through the 28th. We are almost done with 2022. Every time I write these horoscopes, I'm like, wow, the years are getting closer and closer the year is getting closer and closer to ending, and it just feels weird because time just goes by really fast. Anyway, as you can see, my shirt is a little funky. This is why I don't always wear all of the shirts that I have because of the black background, but I have a new background coming at some point. I just need to update it. But speaking of which, a few announcements. One, make sure that you are coming to the astrology picnic here on Sunday, September 4th. That's going to be Labor Day weekend. I'm going to make sure I keep promoting it to remind you guys. I'd love to see you there. It's going to be a lot of fun, music, games, just hanging out with people that are into astrology on a casual Sunday afternoon. So, yeah, make sure you come. Other thing is I just actually kind of rebranded and updated my website. So if you haven't been on my website in a while, go ahead and check it out. I just completely redid it. I got my new logo up there. I'm eventually going to change my little thumbnail photo, or not my thumbnail, but like the little photo for like the YouTube Avi. That's going to be changing soon, as you could probably see right here. Oh, right here. That's my new logo. It's pretty freaking sweet, right? Anyway, my website's updated. Go ahead and check it out. It's really, really cool. I'd super appreciate it. And thank you guys for all the support, because I was able to update my website because of all of your guys' support. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with this week's highlights. So the big highlight, I don't even say the big highlight. This isn't like the craziest week ever. It's really not that big of a week. There's just one real major transit to pay attention to, and that's Venus. But we start this week off with Virgo season starting off. Virgo season is just back to school season, in my opinion, which I like. It's like, getting your books and getting your pencils. And I don't know, there's something, sure, that's the very consumer way to look at it, but it's a fun energy. Mercury enters Libra. Mercury's already in shadow at this point. So, this is just bringing more of that Mercury retrograde energy into the game. But I think it'll be a little bit more clear about what the Mercury retrograde will be about once Mercury enters Libra. So we'll be talking about that. Venus squares Uranus. Well, you can't talk about Venus squaring Uranus without, of course, Venus going opposite Saturn. So Venus squaring Uranus and going opposite Saturn is going to be kind of a goof, and it's going to be kind of embarrassing, to say the least. But luckily, we get the new moon in Virgo, and I think that's really this week's big highlight. I'm a broken record. I'm always waiting for the new moon. I'm always ready to restart. I'm always ready to get a ground zero, and I'm very much looking forward to this new moon in Virgo. I think also because Virgo is a mutable sign, and what I really appreciate about lunations, especially new moons in mutable signs, is the whole idea of a mutable sign is about change. Like, I live here in Denver, and something I really like about Denver is that it is really similar to latitude, I believe, of like ancient Greece. And so you get all 4 seasons here in Denver, Colorado. So like when Virgo season starts, you're really going to start seeing, the weather change, the leaves starting to change. And it won't be necessarily Libra season yet, where everything's really, beautiful and pretty and everything's all the fall colors. But we're going into that change of season. We're going into that change of energy. And this 30 days of Virgo season allows us to change over. And then we get to Libra season, where it's cardinal, it initiates, it begins. We can like actually begin again. So I really like new moons in mutable signs, but this new moon in Virgo is a great time to, it's kind of like harvesting the wheat and getting the bread ready. And, like I've said before, language really comes from trading wheat. That's why they had to make tablets to figure out how many bushels of, wheat and stuff was going around. So there's something about like harvesting your wheat, taking account for it, and getting prepared for the winter, or at least I should say the fall. So that's really what a lot of this week is. But I mean, the other thing too is that it's, this Venus stuff that we've got going on is going to be pretty interesting. So let's go ahead and jump into Monday. On Monday, the only thing we've got going on is the moon's going to be ingressing into Cancer. And as it ingresses into Cancer, it'll be making a square to Jupiter. Now, Mercury will be trining Pluto at the same time. So it's not like the only thing going on, but it's a pretty casual Monday. As the moon ingresses into Cancer, again, I usually repeat myself quite a bit of times, especially with the moon, because the moon, it goes into the same sign once every 30 days. But the moon, when we're talking about how we feel, our bodies, our sensitivity, it's going into Cancer. There's this sense of like replenishing. There's this sense of like, it's kind of like after a hard day of like, working out in the field, get a drink of water, relax underneath the shade. But the moon is going to be making this square to Jupiter, as you could see right here. Moon Jupiter. And again, we're kind of starting to understand Jupiter. Now that Jupiter's retrograde, what I really appreciated about it is, and I've said this before on somewhere, I think I just said this on my live monthly overview. So if you don't know, on my Patreon, I do a monthly overview, and I do it live. I get to talk to everyone who's on my Patreon. I do that every month, and I just got done doing it for September. But this is not a full Jupiter and Aries transit. This is simply giving us a sneak preview of what the full Jupiter and Aries transit, which happens in 2023, will have. Jupiter is still doing its thing in Pisces, technically. It still has to come back into Pisces and wrap things up there. And so Jupiter being retrograde in Aries, are really starting to learn of like, hey, it takes a little bit more than gusto and bravery and, and like initiation to get things done. Like Jupiter in Aries is very like, like I was saying the past couple of weeks, it's, you have to put your beliefs there first. You have to believe it, then you can get it. What's that saying? You got to believe it before you can see it. But as Jupiter's now retrograde, we're understanding, what I love about Jupiter is that it's about learning and it's about knowledge. And oftentimes it takes trial and tribulation. And, it takes a lot more than just, pure ignorant belief to get something, done. It takes faith, and faith is a act of gratitude. It's an act of time and patience, and that gets into the Saturn stuff. But why I'm bringing this up is the moon squares Jupiter. There is the sense of like, you can't fight a war without food. You can't fight a war without water. I'm a big history nerd, and one of my favorite like rabbit holes of history is the logistics of food during war. Because when you think about all these wars that have ever gone on, they've had to eat too, and it's a really interesting thing to get into. But this moon squaring Jupiter is really like, hey, the moon's waning. We're getting ready for that new moon. Where do you need to maybe replenish yourself in order to keep doing that Jupiter thing that you're kind of doing? Again, Jupiter is wanting to expand, but as it's retrograde, we're not filling up with air. Like think of Jupiter direct as like a hot air balloon, but like putting fire in that balloon, versus Jupiter retrograde is that fire not going out and you're kind of just coasting and floating. And eventually you'll have to put another fire to make sure you go back up again. But as Jupiter's retrograde, that energy isn't necessarily there. It's kind of like a coast. It's kind of like a floating. And so as the moon squares Jupiter, maybe this is a time to kind of, again, replenish yourself. It is squaring Jupiter. So there is this sense of like, you don't want to take too long. You don't want to relax too much, so to say. But also you don't want your like, it's kind of like if you ever played like, sports, I'm probably going to sound so dumb right now, but like, you don't want to overload on like Gatorade before a game, because you're going to have all this sugar and you're going to get like cramps and stuff like that. So it's just about, doing things in the right amount of doses here. But Mercury trines Pluto on this day. And, that's not the craziest transit in the world. And I'm don't get me wrong, Pluto affects our day-to-day lives and the personal stuff. But, I really look at Pluto as more of the bigger picture stuff, like, government, corporations, all that stuff. But as Mercury's trining Pluto, there is power in knowledge. Now, what's interesting is Jupiter's in Aries, and, knowledge without action is, almost ignorance. So Mercury trining Pluto, there is the sense of gaining a lot of knowledge, gaining a very clear understanding, and harnessing the power of that. Now, the question is, what are you doing with it? Because you can know everything in the world, but if you can't actually apply it into your day-to-day life, you don't really know anything. And so as Mercury's trining Pluto on Monday, I think there's the sense of like, what are you understanding? What are you communicating? And where's that power coming in? Now, this is also important because Pluto, power dynamics are really important to be aware of. When can you be taking things too far? When you can be overpowering a situation. But this is a trine to Pluto. So there is this sense of like gaining something positive, and Mercury working harmoniously with Pluto of, hey, maybe there's a breakthrough of an understanding that you get by, the Mercury and Virgo stuff. It's I was thinking about this with my YouTube, because as a business owner, I want to grow my business, but it's going to take, I have to go, like, I haven't been necessarily paying attention to my analytics. So I'm going to have to go in there, go into my analytics, look at my retention rate, look at my CPM and all of this stuff. And, that's stuff that I used to do a lot more, but haven't been doing recently. But there's a lot of power in knowledge. Once you have the data, once you have the facts, then it becomes clear what you have to do. Then the real question is, are you doing it or not? So as Mercury trines Pluto, there is like information that becomes very powerful, which I do like. But then we get into Tuesday, and as we get into Tuesday, the sun's going to ingress into Virgo. We get into Virgo season. I say this every year, but someone tweeted me like back in 2016, back when Astro Twitter was like me and 5 other people. But someone was like, Virgo season's musty. And that has never escaped I only think of musty when I think of Virgo season. But as the sun goes into Virgo, we're talking about our, like, again, as the sun was in Leo, there was a lot of strength in, our will, our ego, and our pride. But as the sun goes into Virgo, there is this sense of adaptation. There is this sense of change. There is the sense of trying to be more precise and perfect what, because there's when you think of a performer, the sun in Leo is very performance oriented, right? Like being in front of the stage, being in front of everybody. And, as a performer, there's the show part of your performance, right? Like, are you connecting with the audience? Are you like passionately acting whatever it is that you're doing? But as the sun goes into Virgo, and as a performer, there's a sense of like, how can we fine tune a performance? How can we make things better? How can we be more analytical, detailed, and planned? And this is stuff that, like, if you're not familiar with, performance, a lot of these performers, no matter what it is, have detailed plans and outlines of how they go about their show, what part of the stage they're standing on and at what time, and all the pyrotechnics and all of this other stuff that goes into it. And it's to, enhance the show. It's to make it, better. And so as the sun goes into Virgo, there is the sense of how can we make ourselves better? How can we fine tune the situations that we're in? And the moon's going to be sextiling Uranus at the same time, which isn't the craziest thing. Like Tuesday's relatively chill. The moon's in Cancer sextiling Uranus. And I mean, like, what is that? It's the moon's waning. It's in Cancer. We're getting our needs met. We're kind of nourishing ourselves. The moon in Cancer is just a time to really like take care of yourself, take care of your, your body, your mind, your soul, get in tune with everything. It's very replenishing. As it sextiles Uranus, maybe there's some slightly innovative way you go about it, or maybe you do things differently, or something I haven't talked a lot about because I try to make these. My whole goal with astrology is personal development. I've said this before, but like, and a lot of people think personal development, and they like, I've gotten comments of like, "Oh, you're so into toxic hustle culture." Like, hustle culture is like that's a new age phrase for something that is very ancient. Like, yeah, hustle culture has been around forever because we have to work to get things that we need, and so so I try to orient my videos in this personal development format. And so why I'm bringing this up is when it comes to Uranus is great for these breakthroughs and it's great for innovation. But the problem is that it also can throw you off your tracks. And what you want to be stable and what you want to be consistent, because this is a fixed sign, isn't at the moment. We're seeing this with the supply chain breakdown. With the Saturn-Uranus square. Saturn is literally like the supplies and the gear, and squaring Uranus, it's like, well, this is going to be out of whack. This is going to be, all types of messed up. But the reason I'm bringing this up is, Uranus can really throw a wrench in your plans. It can really be disruptive in a bad way. And that's not always easy. A lot of the fixed signs out there probably resonate with this because Uranus and Saturn are fucking up your whole chart. So there is a lot of disruption. And that is, both good and bad. The good part about it is it's going to challenge you. You have to grow, you have to adapt. But the bad part is we just want things to be easy and consistent. So it makes it difficult. And the reason I'm bringing this up is the moon sextiles Uranus, this could be like again, it's a sextile. So it is, working in favor of each other. So doing something, again, innovative, something that might be a little bit new for you, something that is, I was making a comment on my Twitter. I'm back on Twitter, by the way. I don't know why you guys let me back on there, but I made a comment of like when Uranus first entered Taurus in my 6th house. I'm a Sag rising. I was like, I'm going to try going vegetarian this year, and now I'm like 4 years deep into Uranus and Taurus, and I'm like eating raw meat and sunning my balls and shit like that. And so there's this like innovative way of going about stuff, maybe doing something that, kind of sparks something in you. We're like, let me just try this real quick. Tuesday's a really good day for that. The sun's in Virgo. We're doing things different. We're in the season of change. And as the moon sextiles Uranus, don't be afraid to, get your needs met, but maybe in an innovative and in a different way. And this is a sextile. So it's not, you don't need to like, I'm going to, do a 75 hard day challenge or something, but just like, try something like a little bit different. I really don't know what else to say about that. But Tuesday's moderately chill, not a lot going on. I need to eventually get like one of these. Eventually, I want to get like a meter of like all of the zodiac signs and how lit a day will be or how chill a day will be for each zodiac sign. I think that would be pretty fun. But as we move to Wednesday, The moon goes into Leo. It's going to be sextiling Mars as the moon, and then the moon trines Jupiter. Wednesday's lit. Wednesday's very lit. This moon in Leo transit is very fun. This can be, I don't want to say bad. It looks so fun to me, but I'm biased because I'm a moon. I'm a Leo, and all of my planets are in fire and air. So if you're like all the water and earth stuff, maybe this will be a little bit too rambunctious for you. But as the moon ingresses into Leo, again, we're getting into that dark moon phase. And, something I like to criticize Virgos about, because like, especially Virgo risings, because Leo rules the 12th house for Virgo risings. And Leo is all about like pride and passion and being seen and witnessed and in the spotlight. But when you get Virgo risings and Leo rules the 12th house is the subconscious and fears, and Virgo risings are so hard on themselves, and they like have zero confidence sometimes when it comes to like they're like that Leo part of yourself. And the reason I'm bringing this up is as we have this waning moon in Leo, like, hey, you gotta just like, I was talking about this in my live monthly overview. A lot of the Virgo stuff and Gemini stuff that we're getting, the analogy I was using was, I was really primarily raised by my mom and my sister, and they always watched America's Next Top Model, and they just fucking grill those women. I mean, like it is so hardcore how much they criticize them down to the T. And if you are going to be criticized, especially if it's in a healthy way, maybe not like America's Next Top Model, but like, if you want to perfect yourself, if you want to criticize, you have to kind of take away the ego part of it. You have to understand, like, like when you watch like some of these celebrities or artists, get advice from other people, and you could see their insecurities get brought up because they feel like they're not, when you bring up how they can be better, they feel like they're not good enough. And you have to understand that you are good enough, that you're fine. But if you want to be better, you have to look at your vulnerabilities and weaknesses. And so as the moon goes into Leo, this is going to be the time to really puff up your chest and to kind of take a little bit of criticism here. This is going to be a theme as we go out for the next couple of weeks. But as the moon goes into Leo, this is like our emotions are fixated on, again, our pride, our ego, our sense of self. What I like about this is that the moon's going to be sextiling Mars and Gemini. So this is kind of like, kind of feeling a little proud. Mars and Gemini being able to kind of like, make slight comments here and there. Moon is sextiling Mars. This might energize you to do more things. Now that, in fact, I'm actually recording this on Thursday because I have a trip. I'm flying out on Friday because usually I record these on Friday. So I'm not in the Mars and Gemini energy yet. But I will say, as Mars ingresses into Gemini, there will be this feeling of, for one, being free, not being under, the Saturn square, not being near Uranus and North Node, and not being in detriment. And as Mars goes into Gemini, it's going to be like getting out on the prowl. And so the moon sextiling Mars will be really positive for kind of like, exploring, getting out there. Mars and Gemini, Mars is our action, our energy, what we're directed towards. And this is a dual-bodied sign. So there's a lot of like doing two things or exploring two different areas or going back and forth. And I think as the moon sextiles Mars, there is the sense of like, hey, this is what I'm going after. This is what I want to perfect. This is what I want to understand better. And so as after the moon sextiles Mars, and there's this sense of like kind of getting the initiation phase going, the moon will then separate from Mars and just pretty much, where's Jupiter? Oh, there it is. It start trining Jupiter all day. So there is this sense of confidence that's getting installed. As Mars is now like, again, out of Taurus, Mars is a little bit in a better sign. It's not the best sign ever, but this is going to affect Jupiter because Jupiter's in Mars's sign. And now Jupiter's in Aries. And there's this sense of kind of like, okay, I got to be more wise about my actions. I have to put more, faith and belief into my actions, into myself. And as that moon separates from Mars, where there is this sense of maybe doing something different, doing something new, the moon will trine Jupiter, where there is this confidence that gets really installed. So on Wednesday is a really good day to like, I don't want to say get out of your, you should always be getting out of your comfort zone. But this is more of a day to like, lean into feeling confident and lean into like, hey, what's going to make, me feel better? And that might be a little bit harsh because, again, we're going to be having some stuff come up here later on this week. That might be a little bit harsh, but as the moon goes into Leo and trines Jupiter, I think this is about getting your confidence ready to make this transition. It's kind of like, again, this back to school stuff. You get the right clothes, you get the books and the notebook. So, you can look as fresh and fly as possible, even though you're nervous as fuck to be starting a new grade or going to a new school or meeting new people. So it's kind of like, you got to get your confidence up in order to put out your best self, right? You know, the way that you dress, the way that you take care of yourself really matters when it comes to self-confidence. That's Leo stuff, but that's what's going on Wednesday. And we get to Thursday and this moon conjoins Venus. Love this. Absolutely love this. Now, I will say this comes with stipulations, because here on Thursday, moon conjoins Venus, great, right? But then when we get to Friday, the Venus is going to square Uranus, and then what on Saturday? No, on Sunday, Venus will go opposite Saturn. So there are some issues after this with the Venus stuff. This is like, the way I would explain this is like getting a really new haircut, something very different, being like, I look good, I look sexy, this is great. But then as Venus squares Uranus and goes opposite Saturn, it's like it's not, like, and everyone makes fun of you for it, and then you feel stupid for doing something new and different. So it's hard to talk about this Moon-Venus conjunction without talking about the after effects. So while I love this Moon-Venus in Leo, and again, like that idea of like, getting a haircut, this would be a great day for a haircut, like a waning moon on top of Venus. The only issue is that it could end up being, Venus is going to square Uranus to go opposite Saturn. Maybe not everyone will like it as much as you do. But the moon conjoining Venus is like, it's not really about other people. It's about how do you feel? Like, for some women, they cut their hair really short and it feels really great for them. While, in a stereotypical, like, patriarchal society, there's like, why don't you have long hair? And some women like their hair long, some women like their hair short. And it's much more about like, how do they feel about it? And does it make them feel more comfortable and confident and, all of that good stuff? And so you can't really worry about what other people are going to say. And I'm teeing this up for Saturday, or for Sunday, of course. But as the moon conjoins Venus on Thursday, this is really a good day to like focus on like what's going to make you feel good, what's going to make you look good. Venus is fun and enjoyment. It's in Leo. It wants to be in the spotlight. It wants to be witnessed. It wants to be recognized. So that looks very fun. And I think the moon conjoining Venus here is really like getting connected with that feeling, embracing that feeling. And the moon, this is what I like about Thursday, is the moon is applying to Venus all day. Like it doesn't actually hit Venus until Friday morning, but then after it hits Venus, the moon will square Uranus, and then Venus will square Uranus on Friday. So Thursday will feel good, but let's get to Friday. Friday, the moon will then square Uranus. Mercury enters Libra, and Venus squares Uranus. So it's quite a bit to talk about, actually. The moon will, again, really hit Venus first thing in the morning, but then the moon will square Uranus, and it's like, that didn't go as according to plan. Like, have you ever gotten, women would probably relate to this, but I can only think of it as a guy, because like I remember when I used to have like spiky hair, because it was like the 2000s, and I was like 8. I remember there'd be times where I'd get a haircut, and it'd be spiky, and the barber would make it look all sick. But then I'd come home, wash out the gel, and I'd try to do it on my own, and it looked like shit. And I couldn't get it to look as good as it did at the barber shop. This is kind of like one of those moments of like, or there's something disruptive going on here with the moon squaring Uranus, right? There's something where it's like, our emotions, our pride, the way that we look, our emotions are very attached to the way that we look at this moment. And this is a dark moon phase. And as it squares Uranus, it's just going to be a little bit uncomfortable. There's going to be something that maybe didn't necessarily go according to plan. And Venus squares Uranus on this day too, which is really, besides Mercury ingressing into Libra, that's pretty much the most important thing. Because the other thing is Uranus is in Venus's sign. So Uranus, again, innovation, freedom, liberation, in the sign of beauty, in the sign of, fun, in the sign of value. And Venus squaring Uranus is really like, well, again, if you've ever done improv before, I don't want to say I used to be a theater kid, because that never went into high school, but I took 3 years of drama and theater in middle school, and I've been in a bunch of plays and stuff like that. And if you've ever done improv is a lot of fun, but it's one of those things where you have to take risks and you can look stupid. Now, something I really appreciate about the Leo Aquarius axis is it's about humility. You know what I mean? Like, in order to be an individual and to, really get that like Leo part of your life, like roaring, you have to step out in front of the crowd, and you have to be willing to look dumb. You have to be willing to look, incorrect or be criticized. But humility, not humiliation, but humility is very empowering. If you kind of embrace that and don't let it get to you, like for example, if you got like it's one of those things where you kind of have to like laugh at yourself and laugh with people rather than get upset about people laughing at you, if that makes sense. And I feel like Venus squaring Uranus might bring a lot of that energy, being Venus and Leo of like, I want to be, seen real fast, but then it squares Uranus and you slip on a banana. I'm just thinking of like basic drama. So you slip on a banana and then everyone laughs at you and you think you look dumb when you could just laugh at it. And so with Venus and Leo squaring Uranus, this just seems like, looks, beauty, luxuries. It's going to be a little unstable. It's going to be a little bit risky. I think part of me is like, I think this is a good time to do something new and different, especially when it comes to looks and stuff. The only problem I have with that is Venus will go opposite Saturn. So like if you are sensitive to like criticism and the crowd think, it might be a little bit hard, but maybe that's what you need. Maybe you need to toughen up and get some thick skin and, let people hate on you and say, you know what, fuck it, fuck them. I don't give a shit. Sometimes it's good for you. Sometimes the stuff that you don't like is what's best for you, unfortunately. As much as I would love to be all comfortable and on that stuff and comfortable and easy, I do recognize and realize that sometimes the best things for me are the things that I don't want to do. So the moon will conjoin Venus in the morning. It'll square Uranus. It's something like, it's like you're going to want to be seen. You're going to want to do something kind of just out of like, vanity is probably a good word for this. Like doing something out of vanity, and it may not go as expected, but maybe that's what you need. Maybe that needs to happen. So, what I like to say with this type of stuff, a lot of people would tell me, "Oh, Cameron, when is it going to get better? When or how can I avoid this bad transit?" And it's like, what's fun about astrology is you see these transits and you go, oh my God, this is the end of the world. Oh my God, this is so bad. But there's so much power in just letting that shit go and just, whatever happens, happens. Like life is happening for you, not to you. And that really will challenge a subconscious victim mindset that a lot of people will have, because we all have victim mindsets that we take on about stuff. But when you realize that these things are happening for you and not necessarily to you because the universe has it out for you or any of this stuff, like things are actually working in your favor. But sometimes what works in your favor is going to be something that you take as not so favorable. But you have to be open-minded to it, and you have to realize, like, again, I've said this before, like sometimes people's worst, things that happen in life are, the catalyst to their purpose. You know what I mean? Like I was just watching a clip from the Joe Rogan podcast of this guy who was sentenced to, prison for, false murder charge. And it happened to him twice. And, now he's out here trying to get all these other prisoners that were sentenced, without any evidence and, falsely accused. He's trying to help them. And it's like, how powerful is that when it comes to like transmuting negative energy and being like, I've had these negative things, and he could have turned that into negativity. He could have been, got into addiction, stayed in prison, went down that rabbit hole, but he transmuted that into something positive to help people. And so this might be one of those moments where you might have to take something and it might be humiliating and it might be uncomfortable, but it'll be a challenge to transmute it. And this is really important because we're pretty much at the new moon in Virgo at this point. There is a lot of transmutation at this point. It's a mutable sign, the sign of change, and a new moon of like new beginnings here. So don't be afraid to do something. And if something happens, it happens. Try to look at it from a bigger picture. But Mercury also enters Libra, and that's I don't want to say the most important thing, but it is very important because Mercury is going to go retrograde in Libra. Mercury is Mercury is the planet of, again, communication, intellect, rationality, simplicity, organization. And as it's going into Libra, a lot of Mercury in Libra is going to be about communicating in relationships. Like Libra is the relationship sign. And as Mercury's in Libra, how are we communicating with people? How are we getting our messages across? What's important is, and I'm going to be mentioning this for the next couple of weeks, is Mercury is by sign and almost by degree trining Mars. Mercury will actually never trine Mars to the exact degree. It will like kind of edge it a little bit, but it doesn't actually happen. It doesn't actually perfect. So with Mercury trining Mars, and Mars is in, Gemini and Mercury sign, this is really about having these conversations. And Mars and Gemini is going to be a lot about debates over these next few months. We're going to be, trust me, this whole, COVID situation and the vaccines and all of this stuff. We're all going to be debating the shit out of each other for months on end until March necessarily. But as Mercury goes into Libra, there is the sense of how can we communicate better in our relationships? How can we get our message across in a very peaceful and in a delicate way? Now, Venus is in Leo, and so there is going to be the sense of like, I just need to get this off of my chest and I just need to say it to you. But as Mercury, leaves Virgo, where it's much more about like saying the right words and being specific about, again, like your grammar and all of this stuff, Mercury in Libra is just like, are you getting the message across though? And when it comes to communication skills, like most communication is not verbal. It's in the body, it's in, your tone. And that's a lot about Mercury and Libra of like, how are you addressing this situation? And are you coming about it in, you might be Mars and Gemini of like, I'm going to argue this fact and this data and this and that. But you could say that with a tone of peace and with a tone of, wanting to work things together. So I think as Mercury goes into Libra, there is going to be this, again, bigger focus on relationships, but also this bigger focus on balance, on harmony, on, because also Mercury's going to go opposite Jupiter, and we'll talk about that next week. But it's really about like, how can we rationalize things? And when I mean things, I mean Jupiter's in Aries right now too. So this like, I got to go big or go home, and I got to put all my energy into this, or I'm not good enough. And Mercury in Libra is like, how can we do this in a better way? It's kind of like in my live monthly overview. I just did this yesterday. This is why it's in my head. But I talk about Mercury in Libra and like the Jupiter and Aries being like divorce court almost, of like Jupiter and Aries might be like your shitty ex being like, I want to take you for everything and I want the kids all the time and you get nothing and you have to pay X, Y, and Z. Mercury in Libra is, kind of like, hey, can we be a little bit more fair about this? Like Jupiter and Aries might be very, passionate about what it wants and very, vindicated with it. But Mercury in Libra is like, let's be a little bit more fair here. So I really like this for this waning. I mean, yes, the Venus is going to square Uranus, but Mercury's going to go into Libra. And there is the sense of like breaking the ice nicely. Like it's not like Mercury in Virgo is very like tactile and specific, but Mercury in Libra is like, how can we, like, let's say Venus is squaring Uranus and you look ugly, rather than being like, you're ugly, ha ha ha. Like Mercury in Libra's like pulls you to the side and is like, hey, that haircut looks like shit, right? Like just kind of being a little bit nicer, not so public with it. So that's a lot of Friday. Then we get to Saturday. The moon ingresses into Virgo and we begin the new moon in Virgo, and it will be squaring Mars. I've been looking at this new moon for a couple months now because it is squaring Mars, and I don't necessarily know what to think of it yet. Because Mars is going to be in Gemini for so long, and so I guess let me just channel my opinions about this. Oh, whoops, wrong button. So number one, it's the new moon in Virgo. Like it's a Saturday, so maybe a lot of you have the day off, but the thing is, new moon, new you, reset your intentions. This is Virgo season though. What are your plans for the fall? What are your plans for the winter? Winter and the fall are excellent times to get things done. Like the spring and summer, historically speaking, have been the times to travel and to hang out with people because the weather was warm and it allowed us to, go and meet other people, versus the winter when it was cold and human beings had to stick by the fire. It was a much more of like, hey, taking care of what needs to be taken care of. So I think with this new moon in Virgo, this is an excellent time to like really get into the mode of changing. Like, what are your plans for the fall? What are your plans for the winter? What are your plans for the new year? Like, in my opinion, you should be planning for January of 2023 starting now. This is a really good time. And I can't. So if you guys don't know S.J. Anderson, go watch his channel. He's a fantastic astrologer. I'm going to be having him on my delineation here soon, so I'm going to be talking about this. But he did such a good video about the Mars retrograde in Gemini that I really want you guys to watch. But he talks a lot about this is about planning and preparation, and I couldn't agree more. And I think that's excellent advice. And I think this new moon in Virgo is a time to really sit down and go, what are my plans? What am I preparing for? Make a list. Write down, what you want. Write down what you don't want. And this is really the time to get into that groove, into that moment. But it is going to be squaring Mars. And I think that's where the challenge comes in, is Mars in Gemini is two things, right? There's this and there's that. It's this problem and that problem. Mars is also a lot about fighting and conflict, and it's in the sign of Gemini of like words and data and information. And so I think the hard part about this is this new moon, Mars is in the superior position here. I've said this before, and if you don't know what the superior position means, it means the 10th house from whatever you're talking about. So Mars is, if we were to put this as Virgo rising, or for example, let's say the moon was in Cancer, squaring Mercury, the moon would be in the superior position of Mercury, which means it's, for the gays out there, it's topping Mercury essentially. And so this new moon, I mean, with Mars squaring this new moon and being in the superior position, there is the sense of like, what we're doing is having to change. Mars is our energy and our drive and literally what we are physically doing, and it's an immutable sign. We are changing what we're doing. We're changing about how we go about things. And it's squaring this new moon in Virgo where this might be a process of having to adapt. And it's squaring Mars of like, oh, in order for me to get X, Y, and Z done, I have to change. I have to do something different. And what I like about Gemini, it's not about just necessarily kicking down the door and just being like, let's just do something different right now. Like you can do like your thing that works for you now, but then also slowly, stick your toe in the water and, take one step down at a time into the pool by doing the other thing. Like no one says that you have to just change overnight, but this Mars and Gemini process is going to take 8 months, guys. It's going to take a long fucking time. It's just really funny looking at Mars, how long Mars will be in the sign of Gemini for. And it's going to be really loud and annoying at times. But this is really the time to go, all right, like what do I need to change and do? And what are my plans? How am I going to adapt? How am I going to overcome? And I think there will be a challenge to it. Mars will be squaring this new moon in Virgo. So it's not like for example, let's say you're a kid, like this back to school season analogy that I like to use for Virgo season. It's like, let's say you're going to a new school in a new city you've never been before. And there's this challenge of like, how do I meet people? How do I go about people? Like you can get your school books and all of this stuff all day long, but there's some sort of challenge on top of this that makes this new moon in Virgo like about problem solving. Like this new moon in Virgo, again, it's an excellent time to plan and organize. But Virgo is also about like literally solving problems. And with Mars and Gemini at the top of it, there's some sort of, wherever Mars is at in your chart now, wherever Gemini is at in your chart, Mars is going to be there for a while and it's causing some problems. And we're just now at the initiation phase of knowing what those problems are. And in fact, this new moon in Virgo squaring Mars and Gemini might be like, hey, like if you ever done inventory, like if you're a manager at a retail store, if you've done inventory, or if you work at a bar and you do inventory and you're realizing that you're like there's people over pouring and your sales don't match up with how much alcohol that you have, and there's a sense of going down the calculations and being like something isn't right here. Someone isn't, it's Mars and Gemini. Maybe someone isn't telling the truth. Maybe someone, or it's also Mars. It's Mars and Gemini. Something wasn't communicated properly. Something is, too loud or the data isn't correct. So there's something about like wanting on Saturday of like, getting in your groove, calculating something, but realizing that there is a problem, realizing that the information may not necessarily be clear. So Saturday is a really interesting day. This new moon in Virgo is really interesting. And I think this will give us a lot better idea of what the Mars retrograde phase will have. Mars is not in shadow yet, but it will be entering shadow next week. So as we get to Sunday, was that it on Saturday? Yeah. So we get to Sunday. This is where things get a little bit more hard. The moon's going to trine Uranus. That's good. It'll go opposite Neptune. You guys know my opinions about Neptune. But Venus goes opposite Saturn. Ouch. Owie. So as the moon trines Uranus and goes opposite Neptune, I think the hard part about that is like moon trining Uranus and Virgo is like, great, problem solved, on to the next thing. But then the moon goes opposite Neptune, you go, fuck, I have no idea what's going on. Like moon trining Uranus after this new moon in Virgo is like, hey, well, it's like you think like for example, I wish I can have a better analogy for this at this moment, but the moon in Virgo trining Uranus and Taurus is like, you're just getting off this new moon. The moon is now, starting to, it's not in its waxing phase yet. It's still in its dark moon phase, but it's starting to gain in light. And as it trines Uranus, there's something about, doing something innovative or doing something disruptive or doing something, again, out of your comfort zone. And that might be very exciting. But then as the moon goes opposite Neptune, this is kind of going, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. Like, I don't know. I can't really think of it. Like the moon, Virgo, trining Uranus. This is the only thing that's in my head though. So I might as well get it out. Like, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Well, like it's like, okay, imagine you want to not use toilet paper anymore, and so you get a bidet, and you're like, I'm going to use this bidet, and then you get a splash of water up your ass, and you're like, whoa, that was new and weird. And so the moon opposite Neptune too is very like the moon in Virgo is like as much as you, well, this is the other thing too. I talk about the moon in Virgo, clean, organized, get your shit together. There's always something dirty. There's always something misorganized, and that will help your anxiety and that will help get yourself comfortable. But as the moon goes opposite Neptune, there is this sense of like, maybe if you're cleaning or organizing something, maybe something goes missing and you're like, where's my thing that I had that, or who stole my, and then you find it. But moon opposite Neptune is like, there's as much as you want to think, like, especially with the moon, right? Our emotions and how we're feeling. It's in Virgo. It's like, this is how I feel and blah, 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 blah. But like, I don't know. Emotions are just much more complicated than that. And opposite Neptune is like, the more that you, detail and organize and get together, the more things might be confusing. So I think a lot about Sunday is like having the right balance, the right, mixture of like, being organized and getting your shit together, but also like, not sweating the details as much as maybe you might feel like you need to. Because the moon going opposite Neptune is going to feel a little like I'm missing something, or like I don't have that all the way together, or how do I solve this problem? And you don't need to solve every problem right now. So I think once you get to that point on Sunday where you're like, okay, something's going wrong, you should just like kind of let go of stuff. But Venus goes opposite Saturn. I will say a great example of the sun opposite Saturn last week. If you were on Twitter, it was like me, David Palmer. David Palmer actually started this, SJ, and some other astrologer, but we called out ISAR. ISAR never updated their COVID policy. On ISAR's website, they said that we will update our COVID policy with the CDC guidelines. And they even said on the website, even if that means we have to, give vaccine cards for everybody and everyone has to wear masks or whatever. But then the CDC changed their guidelines and ISAR never updated it. And they were still continuing to be like, yeah, you have to bring a vax card or test negative for COVID, which is just like, and they never changed it along with like the ISAR guidelines. So it took a lot of us kind of causing some shit on Twitter about it, but ISAR changed their guidelines after us yelling at them. And even though we got the excuse of like, oh, well, everyone's getting ready and no one really cares about the people that decided they weren't going to come months ago. And the reason I'm bringing this up is like the sun in Leo opposite the day that happened was when the sun was in Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius. And there is a sense of like, hey, this isn't fair. This isn't right. And you're being dishonest about what your own fucking guidelines were. Like, so fucking change them. And that's like sun in Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius is like, this sounds corny, but truth will prevail. Like, a lot of Saturn and Aquarius is like, again, the authoritarian restriction on society, these mental walls that we've built up between people. Like, we're so divided and it's all mental. It's all that air stuff that we've got going on. But when the sun goes opposite it, like when you just put the spotlight on something being so ridiculous, like vaccine passports for ISAR, which is, yeah, they might have changed it, but ISAR has rubbed me the wrong way. And it's hard to, be so forgiving when it took such a loud response to get them to change that policy. And I think vaccine passports were absolutely fucking really terrifying in a historical precedent if you actually look at it through a historical lens. And they never worked, by the way. Vaccine passports, all they did was discriminate and kick people out of jobs and all that stuff. It's really terrible stuff. That sun in Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius showed that was bullshit, and it overcame it. This is why I'm bringing this up, is the Venus goes opposite Saturn here. And Venus is like fun, like that, like what I love about Leo is like, when you were just yourself and you were just, think of summer, you're going to the beach, you're hanging out with people, or like, think of like literal child's play, like just having fun with something, just being goofy. And that Venus and Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius is like, people are going to hate on you no matter what, especially the Saturn Aquarius stuff. Like, what I think is so interesting about the cancel culture stuff going on right now is it doesn't matter if you think you're on the good guy side, they're going to come after you one day. Like if you're listening to this and you play a certain role so no one attacks you, guess what? They're going to come after you even harder. The harder you virtue signal and the harder you try to rep your set, the more they're going to come after you. So Venus and Leo opposite Saturn is like, you just have to have fun with the humility. Again, a lot of humility with the Leo and Aquarius axis. Venus and Leo too. This is the other thing. Venus and Leo is like, you're going to feel pressured to perform for Saturn in Aquarius. I would say the peanut gallery, but I was told that was a racist term, so I try not to use that. But I've just heard that term for so long growing up. But Venus, like here's the thing, Venus and Leo, you could perform all day long and put all this energy there, but when it's Saturn in Aquarius, like no one gives a shit. No one cares. It's Saturn in Aquarius. They're going to criticize you, and there's still this heavy weight of like, you know what, fuck you anyway. So with Venus and Leo, the bad way of going about it is like trying to outperform yourself so you can get the validation of others. It's not going to work. The way to go about Venus and Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius is doing it for yourself. Have fun for yourself. Look good for yourself. Do all these things for yourself. And people are going to hate on you. Don't listen to them. They hate themselves. What a lot of people don't understand about hate is everyone has like hate stored somewhere. It's not like something like people are like, oh, I don't have hate. Yes, you do. But society doesn't let people like have negative feelings about stuff. So, you know, like for example, like when people get like super angry at you or they attack you for all this stuff, they're not mad at you. They're mad at their own lives and they're mad at their own shit that they got going on. But you are a vector of channeling that negative energy, and you grant them the allowance of channeling that energy towards you. They don't really give a fuck what you do or what you think or how you act in your own life. But when you put yourself out there, you are allowing that channel to be accessed. So you might access that and you might get people's negative opinions, but that says more about them than it does you, if that makes sense. What says more about you is, you know, what's the point of performing in front of your toughest critics if you're not having fun at the same time? If you are more worried about the validation of the people that are around you and not worried about whether or not you're actually having fun, like and I don't want to say that you're in the wrong because it's not about right or wrong, but you're going to be the one that has a shitty time. Like you could still have fun and look dumb. Like this Venus squaring Uranus, like a lot of you are going to look dumb. I'm probably going to look dumb. I look dumb every day. You guys have no idea how fucking dumb I am. And I just don't care anymore. I just don't, because like, what am I supposed to do? Beat myself up all day? And be like, oh, stupid. I did this and I did that and I'm so dumb. I don't care. I'll learn from my mistakes and I'll do better. But like, I'm more worried about having fun. This is my one fucking life. And I think Venus and Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius is you just like, this sounds so corny, but you just gotta like give yourself a laugh. Like, and if everyone's laughing at you, laugh with them. It takes the power away. But like if you are like, the way that you know you're doing Sunday wrong is if you are really taking in everyone's thoughts and opinions about you and, you know, not thinking that well of it. So try not to hold on to that stuff. Try to have some fun. I think that's it. That's it. Let's talk about next week. Oh shit, where's that button? There it is. I always the buttons. Next week, Mars is going to be sextiling Jupiter. I love that, honestly. I totally forgot about that transit, but like, yes, we need some Jupiter juice for Mars and Gemini, because we're going to be arguing and debating all day long. But I really like Mars sextiling Jupiter. This is going to give us some go juice. This is going to give us some energy to go about this, which we kind of need after Mars squaring Saturn, conjoining Uranus and the North Node in Taurus. That was a real slow grind. Like this is definitely kind of giving us a little boost here. Mercury goes opposite Jupiter, where this is, in my opinion, this whole Mercury retrograde theme is about negotiation, you know, balancing things out between, you know, the self and the other. And I think as Mercury goes opposite Jupiter, there is this kind of like, hey, like Mercury is rationality and Jupiter is like not rational. Jupiter is like higher mind, idealism stuff. And Mercury going opposite Jupiter is like, hey, how do we tame that idealism? How do we get that more even and balanced? You know, you can, like Jupiter in Aries is like that Kool-Aid man breaking through the wall grand entrance, but you don't need to break through the wall to make a grand entrance. You know, there's other ways to go about it. And Mars enters shadow next week. Are you ready for that? Think about this. Mars is going to enter shadow at 8 degrees. It will go forward, station retrograde on Halloween, or the 30th technically, go all the way back. And we'll be back to this moment next week when Mars enters shadow. We're going to be back here the end of January of 2023. And then Mars doesn't even leave Gemini until March. So really, like I said, I mean, the next eight months of our lives are really starting now. And so be patient. You know, it's a time to plan. It's a time to prep. It's a time to change things. So I guess as my final thoughts go, like, I feel like I was pretty clear about this week. I don't have too many final thoughts. I think the only thing to really say is, I mean, this is really kind of a time to, summer's starting to be over and we're getting to the next part of the year. And I think this would be a really beneficial time to put yourself in that mindset. So think that's what I got for you guys. So with that being said, I'll leave you off with that. I really love and appreciate every single one of you guys. I really do. I know I've helped some of you out, but you guys really helped me out. I love doing the show. I haven't said my gratitude a lot lately, so I just want to share my gratitude. Of course, this is the very end, and not too many people are going to be watching this part. But anyway, I love and appreciate you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.